I think a lot of us stay in situations that aren't right, or don't pursue the thing that we're actually passionate about or try because we don't think the net will appear. There's a chance it might not, right? But there's also a really great chance that it will, but that's scary. And I think a lot of us think the worst case is actually a lot worse than it really is. Like if you try something that doesn't work, you can just stop and go back to kind of what you were doing. I just don't think we think of it in those terms. It's like everything's gonna fall apart. It's gonna be terrible. People are gonna think I'm such a disgrace and all this stuff. And but that's just our brains, pushing against us. It's not reality.
Yeah, and I think the other piece of it, as we've already mentioned, is what will everybody think, or will I be embarrassed or whatever? And as we've already mentioned, you just gotta, who cares?
Maybe you will be.
Another way of thinking about that I haven't thought about before is like, there's probably people who think you're dumb and you're embarrassing right now. So you might as well, you know what I mean? Like there very well could be. You just don't even know it. So who's to say? Who's to say? Maybe those people will think you're cool once you go do the other thing, and now you have new people that think you're dumb and embarrassing. So what does it matter?
Hey everybody, it's Tim Hinton, the Beast of the Marching Arts. How are you doing? I'm here with my husband, Steve. How are you, Steve?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on to help.
Of course, and our guest, Dan Morrison. Dan, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you.
So Dan from Happy Not Satisfied. Dan, you're so nice to be here and talk with us tonight. Steve and I have a, this is based on the Call Me Beast is one of my new brands where I ask anybody to call me Beast if they want to. And so we have Beast and Steve as our new YouTube channel. So anybody, if you want to find more about Steve and I, it's like, Steve, thanks for being here to be a part of this.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. And Dan, I have to say, I have subscribed to your Substack and I've read that blog that Tim was talking about that caused us to be here today. So I'm looking forward to asking you some questions and learning a little bit more.
Cool. Thanks.
So Dan, Happy Not Satisfied. I think everybody knows all about that. But if you want to, I don't know, should we have him introduce himself? I guess he could.
This is your gig.
I think everybody knows who you are, Dan. But anyway, tell us about Happy Not Satisfied.
Sure. That's kind of you to say that everyone knows what it is. I don't think that's true, but I appreciate that. So Happy Not Satisfied. I'll give you the medium version kind of story of the origin story and what it kind of means to me. But it was actually the person I have to credit for coming up with the phrase is my dad. He was my high school band director at Prospect High School. And whenever we would have like a good performance or something would go well, he would talk to us and say, this is great, but let's be happy but not satisfied. And, that stuck with me. And I kind of figured if anything sticks with a stupid teenage high school boy, there might be something to it. And so, that mantra stuck in my brain through college. And then I became a band director at Reagan High School and eventually became the head band director and started to use it as sort of maybe you call it like a teaching tool, but really culture building catchphrase, I would say, within our program. And it really caught on. And I think it had a lot of meaning for the students in the program. And basically, it kind of boils down to this idea of feeling really proud of what you've done, but also like looking forward to continuing the growth and finding joy from growth. And marching band is such a perfect sort of arena to practice that mantra, I think, because you're in band camp and you could look at an entire day of hard work and you can be really proud of what happened, but then you simultaneously get to look forward to coming back the next day and getting better. And, I think there's a lot of offshoots from this idea that I could talk about, but I think one of the biggest ones that's important to me is kind of this idea that I tried to overcome and still try to overcome of like really putting your eggs in the results basket, right? Like I'm just trying to get to this result and that's what all that matters. And you kind of lose sight of the process and the day in and the day out and the relationships along the way. And for me, that became kind of a major issue, especially as a band director. And I would think about it in terms of this, I'll be happy once it's like, well, I'll be happy once I'll be happy once we win the band contest, right? And that's just like this vicious cycle that I found myself in. And I realized this thing I'm telling students, like, let's be happy, not satisfied, I am not doing in my own life. Like, I'm not doing the opposite of that. Like, let's be really not happy and unsatisfied and frustrated and all of the things. And hopefully we'll do something at the end that makes it all better. But then, fortunately, do this thing at the end, but it didn't make it all better. And then you just want to get the next thing. And so that's where I think happy, not satisfied mindset for me personally really comes into play. But like I said, it kind of was born out of how my dad talked to his students, me included, when we were in high school, and then kind of grew from there.
Well, thank you for explaining that. So I love the idea of it, and I think people have really resonated with it. You know, I love watching your brand grow and gain followers, and you're just doing great work in this arena and in lots of arenas. Which, by the way, I just talked to you last week with the Santa Clara staff, so thank you for giving me so much of your time right now in the middle of a very busy summer.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to. Yeah, Santa Clara Vanguard stuff is a dream come true. You can watch the other video, but that's definitely a very fulfilling part of my life right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's incredible the work that team and everybody and that organization is doing. And all the course of summer, really, it's quite amazing. So you'd have, I get your newsletter. I don't know if it's a blog post or newsletter or whatever, but you had the one about what if it all works out. And I have to tell you, Dan, like this really resonated with me. Like I needed to hear this message, and I keep it around and keep referring to it because I am not good at this. And so I think it resonated so much that I thought, okay, I want to talk to Dan about this more and maybe get more help for me. And I can't be the only one that really needs it. And so do you want to talk about that concept, the leap and the net will appear? It's just amazing, this idea. I know
Absolutely.
the idea. I understand the idea, but I am terrible at this idea too. So you want to sort of set up what the idea is? I'll let you explain it.
Yeah, well, let me start by saying I'm also terrible at it. And as you follow my Substack and the things that I put out, it's typically things that I struggle with, but I think about a lot and try to find ways to be more productive in my thought. Now, I have varying levels of success with that, but I'll get into the post itself and the idea. But I just did want to say, like, I am not here to say I do this and I'm great about it and like all is well. Like it's a struggle for sure. So basically I sat down and just kind of wrote this Substack about how people are really good, myself included, in thinking about the worst case scenario. Like sort of I've been calling it lately like catastrophizing, you know, like thinking about, well, if this happens, then this domino could fall, then this domino could fall, and then this really bad thing might happen. And all of a sudden you find yourself living in these scenarios, at least for me, like for better part of the day. And it's like, what's happening here? And I tried to think about like, I heard, I can't remember if I read this, I heard it somewhere, but it's like, if we're going to spend this much time thinking about the worst case scenario, then we should at least spend that much time or more thinking about the best possible outcome, you know? And I think that human nature, whatever it is, just doesn't lead a lot of us to that place. And when things do work out, it's like it feels good, but for whatever reason, it's hard to remember that and build on that. And then the next time things come around, we kind of default back to the spiraling. That's another word I use a lot, spiraling. And the busier I get and the more stressed I get and the more that's going on, the faster I find myself spiraling. And so that's like an awareness thing for me, where I try to just have really the word is awareness. That's the biggest thing I can say is like, if I can at least have awareness that something's happening, I have a chance of being more productive in my thoughts. Whereas I think a lot of us let stuff happen to us, and it goes and it goes and it goes. And then maybe once we get to a really bad place, we look up and realize, man, I don't feel good. Like, how did I get here? And so my big thing is, how can I be more aware? And if I talk about this stuff, maybe it will help other people be aware too, because there is no quick fix. Like, there's no way to just make these things go away and we're all fine and it's all going to be great because Dan said these 3 steps to lead me into bliss, right? Like, I wish I could say that, I really do, but unfortunately I cannot. And as far as that, the leap and the net will appear, I have to give credit to Richard Floyd on that. When I was making a really big life change, and I ended up leaving my job at Reagan, not because I didn't like it, just because it was time for me to kind of pursue new things. And I ended up going to business school and like all of this very uncertain stuff. And he was in my office, and he was a really great mentor. And he would come out and rehearse the band. If you don't know Richard Floyd, he's an absolute legend, band director, musician, teacher, mentor, all the things. You know, I wasn't sure exactly what he would think about me, like leaving this job. And he was so kind and so gracious. And he said those words to me, leap and the net will appear. And that was one of those moments, like I can see him sitting in the chair in my office in front of me, just thinking about it, because it was such a like a special salient moment, because it's very difficult, I think, to convince yourself of that. You know, I think a lot of us stay in situations that aren't right, or don't pursue the thing that we're actually passionate about or try because we don't think the net will appear. There's a chance it might not, right? But there's also a really great chance that it will, but that's scary. And I think a lot of us think the worst case is actually a lot worse than it really is. Like if you try something that doesn't work, you can just stop and go back to kind of what you were doing. I just don't think we think of it in those terms. It's like, everything's going to fall apart. It's going to be terrible. People are going to think I'm such a disgrace and all this stuff. And, but that's just our brains, pushing against us. It's not reality. And I've, kind of decided to take several leaps of faith in my life and in my career that I'm so glad I did. And none of them worked out exactly how I thought, but they all worked out. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
everything worked out. And I'm thrilled with my life and my situation. And it's like you can't put the dots together of your life until you look backwards. You can't really, you don't know what's going to happen. But I do think there's something to be said for that positive outlook of it may not be what I thought it was going to be, but there's a really good chance this works out, and it may end up being better than I even thought. And that's happened to me many times too. And I attribute that honestly to just kind of taking some risk and pushing through the initial inertia of, well, it'd be easier just to stay doing what I'm doing. So
Right.
I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no,
I don't even remember what
great.
your question was now.
Yeah, no, that was great. It was great. And it's interesting that you mentioned the catastrophizing thing and the spiraling, because I'm very, very familiar with those. And one of the real things that I knew, okay, I'm getting better. My life is progressing. When I realized, when I could see it coming, like, oh, you're doing that. Like, this was a big moment for me, Dan. It's like, oh, you're doing that catastrophizing thing. You're going down the spiral, And once I recognized it, I felt like that was huge progress for me, because then I could like go, oh, you can stop doing that now. Like you know what I mean? Like, I think being aware that I was doing it was a huge step forward for me.
I just think there's so much power in awareness. That's really what anytime I'm trying to like get a message out or spread something, I'm never doing it from a place of, I'm going to tell you the ways to make this all better. It truly is like telling personal stories and then hoping that something connects, and then hoping that people have a little bit more awareness the next time it happens. Because to your point, like right now, I feel like I'm going through like an insanely busy time and a very stressful time. And there, I have my moments still, like of feeling bad for myself or whatever. But I was just talking to my wife, like I can tell I'm handling it better than I used to be able to. And I really think it's because as I'm going through it, I know it's happening. I know what to expect. I know that it's going to feel stressful, but I also know it's going to be okay, And so like that at least helps, as opposed to having no awareness. And like we've been talking about, it spirals until you get to a point where the people around you, you're probably like, where do my friends go? It's like, well, dude, we don't want to be around you right now. You know what I mean? Like, so, and I've definitely been there for sure with students before I kind of found wellness and stuff, with friends, with family. Like, I know that I can get to a place that's unpleasant. And so I'm always working for everyone around me and myself, try to avoid that as much as I can.
Yeah. I like how you talk about, people don't want to be around you when you're looking at the bad side of the coin, or looking at what could happen, and then it affects your mood, which affects their mood, which really what this all boils down to is, having an optimistic look ahead rather than a pessimistic one, based on what I've heard and what I've read on your blog, which I absolutely love, because it is so easy to catastrophize, as you said, and that holds back so many people from taking a risk or taking a chance to have an amazing experience, whether it's proposing to somebody like your wife, or if it's making a move or changing careers. If you don't take that first step, you don't know.
Even just going on a trip, or
absolutely.
Like, I think it's very hard to take that risk.
Yeah,
I think we're sort of built not to, perhaps, or people are very fearful around it, and so. But of course, as you know, once you do one of those leaps of faith and it works out okay, then you have a little more confidence for the next one.
That's absolutely true. It's like it compounds. And so I think the first one or the first few are the hardest. And that's why so many people don't get there, because once you've done it a few times and you have the experience of like, I did something that other people thought maybe was a little crazy, or I thought they thought it was a little bit crazy, and it ended up being great, And it's interesting. I was teaching a leadership camp yesterday, and I was trying to get kids more engaged, and trying to get a little bit more participation and all that. And I framed it as like the idea of friction and also inertia, but friction. It's like, if you're going to be a leader and you're going to do this, there's going to be times where you have to go down a path that has some friction, not just the path of least resistance. And it takes like overcoming a little bit of friction if you're going to raise your hand and say an answer, because you have to actually pay attention and you have to put yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit and to fully participate. There's this friction there, but I think this friction idea applies to so many aspects of life. If you want to go exercise, there's friction involved. Well, I will say this. I think, and maybe you can relate to this, like at first there's friction and then you fall in love with it and there's almost friction to not do it. But again, that takes kind of a lot to get there, right? It doesn't happen right away. It's like there's an episode of Family Guy, I think, where like Peter does one lap around the gym and then weighs himself and hasn't lost any weight and is like disappointed, right? Like, I mean, so he has not gotten to that point. But my point is to do anything that I think is actually going to make you proud in the end and give you fulfillment, and you can look back and like know you did something. You have to overcome friction. You have to do something challenging, and so if they're increasingly every day in our world, you can live a frictionless life, but I think that also becomes an increasingly emptier, less fulfilled life, which is sad. And just because something is readily available or easy or right there doesn't mean it's necessarily the best thing for us. And not to get like too philosophical, whatever, but I think it's pretty undeniable that society has progressed a lot faster than our brains have evolved. And so that point alone makes it so we're not designed to have no friction. We're designed to have a lot of friction, but our world doesn't inherently have that much anymore. And so I think we have to find ways to create that in productive ways. Whether, this is going down a little bit of a different path, but whether that's exercise, whether that's working really hard, whether that's finding something or becoming an entrepreneur and starting a company, but doing the same thing you've been doing, even if you don't like it, is in a lot of ways less friction than pushing through and trying the next thing. And I think it's that friction, it's that inertia that stops so many of us from trying so many things. Then the last thing I'll say on that is you do have to have a plan or something. Like, I'm not just saying, like, if you don't like your job, but you don't have a next thing, or you don't know what's going to come next, or you have responsibilities that if you stopped it, it would make it so people couldn't like eat or have shelter. Like, that's not the point, right? We want to make sure that we're being reasonable, rational in how we're approaching this. But I think probably most of the people that listen to this are in a place where that stuff is there. It's just that final piece of like actually going through with it that feels so hard.
I like that you going back to something you said earlier. We're talking about what if it all works out. I think a lot of us have this ingrained in us, or maybe it's evolutionary. We already have it already. Is that what are other people going to think? And we let that prevent us from taking that step because we're afraid that if I fail, what will those people think? Not only what will I think, but what will those people think? And I wanted to relate you wrote a blog not too long ago about going to the gym and are people going to watch me? And your point was nobody cares.
Nobody's paying.
Nobody's watching you.
Everybody's so self-absorbed. But I think that keeps a lot of people from going to the gym because they're like, what will people think? And I'll obviously not know what I'm doing. And that's a good example because either they're going to help you or they're actually not even going to notice that you're there. But
no, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I agree with everything that both of you are saying. And with the gym example, just for a second, I think I know people that fall into that category that, I think they're interested, they're curious, but it's scary. But as someone that goes to the gym all the time, I'm thrilled if someone comes in that I haven't seen before that maybe is kind of struggling through something or trying to figure out. They're there, they're doing it, and they're making themselves healthier for themselves and for their family. And the more times they go, the easier it becomes. But that actually, I think, is a really big one, is that step to go into the gym, because everyone assumes that everyone else there knows what they're doing. And I can tell you that's not the case. So it doesn't matter, like just go there and try something. But the point about what other people are going to think and like on social media, what are they going to say? Like, I struggle with that a lot, and that went through my mind a million times when I was thinking about the things beyond being a band director. Was that exactly? And you think that no one is thinking about you as much as you're thinking about you, and I think that if we can realize that it's almost like a not narcissistic, but it's a little bit selfish for us to think that other people actually are that wrapped up to care about all the details of our own lives. That's freeing, I think, when we can get to that point. And if somebody does, I mean, you're always going to have that.
Right. Like somebody's not going to like what you do all the time. Like you have to, I mean, I've come to accept this, like, I'm not going to make everybody happy. And if I try, that's just going to be exhausting. So that's a good example.
Yeah. I mean, everybody has a different outlook and a different opinion of what you should and shouldn't do, but it comes down to the core of you should do it yourself. And to follow up on something else you said earlier, Dan, is, having that balance of, okay, what if it all works out great? If it doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world. I can try something different and change my direction. And we had a conversation very recently about kind of what you said too, hindsight's 2020. You look back at where you were and like, okay, I got from point A to point B, but it wasn't that straight line that I thought it was going to be. There were all kinds of curves and stuff, and I had to adjust my approach along the whole way, which goes to your point of having a plan, and a plan that can be flexible because you don't know what's on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with that more. Being flexible and being open to, the next thing, even if it's not what you thought the next thing was going to be. And some of the other stuff I've written a lot about in my Substack is like all these times I've had these kind of significant failures in my life that led to a much better outcome than if the failure had been a success. And I think that's a really good way of kind of talking about how you don't always know why something's happening to you in the moment. And then you look back and you realize, oh, that's why. Because I applied to all these business schools and I got denied by all of them, including the one that I ended up going to. It's a great Substack I wrote about it. You just go check it out. But it's called Undenied, because I literally ended up getting into business school after being denied. And I thought I wanted to go to these other places and all this stuff, and it's a whole thing. But like looking back, it all made sense to why that happened, and it ended up being a great story, and it ended up being the right fit. And there are times where, and then in business school, you're supposed to like do this big internship, and I again like denied from all these places, and then the one right thing that I didn't even know existed ended up working out, and it was the thing I needed. I was going to stop doing marching band design. I was like, I'm going to business school, and now this is my thing. And I was meeting with a finance professor, and it was a great talk. And I told him about this stuff that I did, and I was like, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to go all in on like this new stuff. And he was like, hold on a second. Seems like that's a really interesting work that you're doing. And he made some great points, so I stuck with it. And that has blown up to just a massive place that I could never have imagined. And it's doing work that I love in the activity that I grew up in, that I care so much about, but in a lane that really fits my personality, my skill set, that I just never would have expected. I didn't march drum corps, and I'm the program coordinator for the Santa Clara Vanguards. So because of a series of events in my life that I could have never predicted. If you asked me in college, what are you going to be doing in 20 years, or it's not been quite 20 years, but I would have said, oh, I'm going to be a professional trumpet player in a symphony orchestra. But I had an overuse injury, and I couldn't play the trumpet the same way anymore after my junior year of college, which at the time seemed devastating. And now I'm literally thrilled that happened, because that was not my truth. I was not meant to do that. I'm not a specialized person like that. And I would not have leaned into being a band director. I wouldn't have moved to Texas. I wouldn't have met my wife. I wouldn't have my kid. I wouldn't be doing any of the things that I'm doing, And so I really try to look back on those moments and reflect and realize these are the most important moments of my life. And they felt like they were failures, and they actually set me up to be totally successful in unexpected ways that have made me fall in love with my life. So
yeah, I love that you're explaining that. And I try to say this to young people starting out in their career a lot. Like, you're going to end up somewhere completely that you could not possibly think of right now. That's the perfect thing for you. You just don't know what that path is going to be. And if you can sort of trust that there's good forces guiding, and this is of course the point of what we're talking about, right?
Yeah. I mean,
It's
it's
so
almost like you
hard.
can't fathom it when you're young. It's just you can't. You have to live through it, and then you realize, oh yeah, he was right.
Well, right, but see, this gets to the point now of today, Dan, because like I'm in the middle of some big things that aren't going exactly the way I thought they would or
Yeah,
should, I should say, and I keep trying to remind myself I need to step back and let this unfold and see where, like, but I keep finding myself wanting to try to force the way I think it's supposed to exactly go.
yeah.
And so I would love some reminders about stuff that I think I know that I just can't get past.
Okay, I could try. I mean, I think
That's
I think with
easy.
stuff
Come
like
on.
that, I mean, I'm the same way. Yeah, you know what this reminds me of, and I'm always trying to reconcile this is like you hear this, but like people on social media or whatever, always talking about like you have to say no to more stuff. You have to protect your blood and you have to say no and this and that. But then there's also the other side of that. It's like, well, you have to push through and you have to have grit and you have to be able to do it and you have to have perseverance. And it's like, okay, well, which one is it? Right. But the problem is that it's both. But I think we have to like really tap into our gut and listen to which one is it? Is this something worth pushing through and sort of asserting our will on to make sure it gets there, or is this showing me signals that like truly I need to do something different or back off or change? And that's only a question I think each of us can answer in the specific zone that it's occurring in. But again, unfortunately, I don't think there's like a diagram you can follow, like if yes go here, if no go here. You know what I mean? Like you have to have, and I'll be honest, there was a situation recently where I removed myself from the situation in a way I had never done before, because I was raised and I am inherently a person that will push through. Like that's just how I am, and I think it's paid off massively in a lot of ways in my life. But I'm finally now realizing there were also times where I did that and it might have been okay in the end, but it caused a lot of emotional distress for me that was not commensurate with the okay it was in the end. And so now finally I'm trying to recognize those moments and trust that I should listen to my instincts on that because I have enough experience pushing through. And I think that's part of it too, like with young people especially, you do have to have an element of like pushing through things past the point of where it's just comfortable, like the friction thing, right? For many reasons, but because I believe a little bit, and I was thinking about this yesterday, like you and me and whoever can tell people stuff all the time, but there's just some stuff that people have to do on their own, even if it's exactly how you told them it was going to go. You still have to do it and feel it yourself and feel the pain or feel the joy or feel the stress or the anxiety or whatever it brings, because there's something about our makeup where if we don't feel it, I don't know if we can truly believe it. And for better or for worse, at least in my experience, that's kind of the truth. And so I guess all that to say, like as we get to more mature points in our lives, I think we just have to trust our instincts on, is this something that I need to push on, or is this something that I need to let pass through me or pass by or be removed from me? Or let it change and let somebody else who will take the lead, and then I can just kind of see what happens. It's complex. I think it's not an easy answer, but I think we have to like rely on our past experience and our instincts to find what maybe the next best step is.
I'm glad you say that, because you have to experience it yourself. And those of us who have lived and been around for a while, we joke and say, what, our parents, our teachers were way smarter than we gave them credit for.
Yeah.
When they told us these things that we had to experience ourselves. And now we're like, aha, I get it. And I know what they're saying. But I also like that you're saying, it's okay to know when to say when it comes to something as well. And each person has their own individual journey about where they need to go and what makes sense for them in their next step. So I'm really glad you brought that up.
Yeah, absolutely. Even to the point where there was a great interview with Scotty Scheffler, who is the #1 golfer in the world right now, and he's on absolute fire. He just won the Open Championship pretty easily. But at the beginning of the week, he basically had this kind of rant he went on, and the thesis of it was, what's the point? It was basically like, we go and we win all these golf tournaments, but I win a golf tournament and it feels great for 2 minutes. and then I'm thinking about dinner, and then I'm thinking about the next tournament. It's like, what's the point? Like, this isn't. It's like he got to this place where he's realized the ultimate fulfillment in life is not from winning a golf tournament. And that really, I like that, because that's kind of the essence of happy, not satisfied, right? It's like, you don't just get to this end thing and suddenly you have bliss forever. That's just not how it works. So, and if you're thinking that way, you do get to a place where like, well, what's the point? But what I would say is, it's great that he's having these realizations, but I also don't necessarily think he could have had them without also chasing that stuff and winning those tournaments and going through that. Him saying that to the next generation of golfers isn't going to make them all of a sudden just be like, oh yeah, that's right, okay, got it. Like, I think it's really great, and it might shift some people's mindset a little bit, but I just think it's part of who we are, that we have to feel it for ourselves, and then hopefully we learn, and we can then be open to receiving that information a little bit more once we've lived through some experiences that teach us both the positives and negatives of how things can work out.
And I completely agree with you too. And I love the idea of happy, not satisfied, because what is your motivation if you're satisfied all the time to continue to have new experiences and reach new goals? Which I think is the essence of what you're saying there too, is you can be very happy with what you've accomplished, but you can also be excited about what's around the next corner.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like trying to reconcile ambition with sort of peace of mind. It's like, how can we have both of those things? Because I think of myself as a relatively ambitious person. And when I let that be fully in the driver's seat and without any other passengers, that's when I can go to my sort of worst places of being stressed and anxious and thinking about only the end result. And so it's like, how do you also find a way to enjoy the ride, And that's why I try to think of it as like, well, instead of dwelling on the end, let's dwell on the journey, right? Let's dwell on the process. Let's find a way to find joy in the improvement and keep that as the perpetual thing. Because then another little like catchphrase I like is that achievements are byproducts of the process. Like, if we are leaning into the process and we're living by this happy, not satisfied idea, then more than likely along the way, you're going to get those quote unquote achievements, the benchmarks, the check marks, the whatever they are, because you're finding a way to improve the way you're doing things and you're finding joy in that. And if that can be the focus, then those things that you wanted in the first place will probably come even in an even more robust way than you thought they could. And that's been my experience in life, and that's all I can speak to, but it's definitely been my experience.
Yeah, and I want to go back to the risk aversion part,
Yeah.
because I feel like that you were talking about leap and the net will appear, and I do think that is true, but I feel like a lot of people are terrified of the leap.
Yeah.
And I know that there have been times in my life when I can look back and I took a leap, and it certainly, as we discussed, turned out to be a great thing for me. But man, it took a lot for me to do that and to take that risk. So, what do you say to people to give them, sort of permission to be bold, or encourage them to take those chances?
I mean, it's a great question. I think, we talked about this a little bit earlier. Well, I think my first instinct on that would be to ask, like, what is the actual worst case scenario here, And when people start to say it out loud, a lot of times it's like, they almost feel ridiculous that they were so worried, because like the worst case scenario is usually I go back to what I'm doing right now. And it's like, well, so the worst case scenario is literally your current life. Like, it's maybe not so bad, right? Like, and it's not always that simple, but I think a lot of times it's pretty close, like, just for the sake of example, if I had left teaching and things didn't quite go the way that I was hoping or whatever, and I found myself in a place where it's like, all right, I've got to make sure I've got income, like this is not going great, I would have gone back to teaching. I would have found a job. I'm fairly confident, like I would have become a band director again, and that's what I was doing before. And so the answer to that question for me is like, what's the worst case scenario literally was doing what I'm doing right now, which wasn't bad. Like I said, I didn't leave because I didn't like it. I left because I have a personality that's always kind of seeking growth and finding a new avenue. And that really is why. And we don't need to like get into all that right now. But the point is, if somebody is worried to take a leap, but they feel strongly that it could be something that opens up a whole new realm of life for them, asking what is the actual worst case scenario and then making them say it out loud and talk through it, to me is a very powerful step. Because if the words are, I would just be doing what I'm doing right now, then that's almost like, why would I not do this? Like, how could I not do this if that's the answer? But there's this like haze of anxiety that exists in our brain about doing something risky, where we don't even take the time to let the haze settle and see what the actual root is or the actual answer is. We just let all that live in there, and we don't exactly know what it is. Like, I think if we get specific with it, then it takes the power away from whatever that is. The power is there in just letting the general ick exist. And I'm guilty of that as anyone is. But as soon as you kind of sit there and you start thinking through things in an organized way, or write it down, or like whatever, all of that starts to dissipate, and you realize, and you have a little bit of clarity. And then I think you start to realize, like, oh my, like, I don't even have a good reason to not do this. It was just like this general feeling that didn't actually have any specific root. So I guess that's how I would answer that.
I think it's so easy to get comfortable in your current situation that anything that's not in that situation is deemed scary or something that I shouldn't do. And one thing that I like to do, whatever it is, changing careers or a move or whatever, is to say, I'm not the only person who has ever done this. It has been done before. People make changes all the time. Why not me?
Yeah.
And
I have a funny analogy for that my dad always says when we're at an amusement park or Disneyland or something, and he'll be like, if I was ever worried about going on a ride, I see all the old people and kids coming off and they're all fine. So I'll probably be fine too.
That's pretty good.
That's very valid.
Yeah. A lot of people have done this and survived. So why not me? Right. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I think the other piece of it, as we've already mentioned, is what will everybody think, or will I be embarrassed or whatever? And as we've already mentioned, you just gotta, who cares?
Maybe you will.
Another way of thinking about that I haven't thought about before is like, there's probably people who think you're dumb and you're embarrassing right now. So you might as well, you know what I mean? Like, there very well could be. You just don't even know it. So who's to say? Maybe those people will think you're cool once you go do the other thing, and now you have new people that think you're dumb and embarrassing. So what does it matter?
Well, and to that point, I can tell you, there are for sure people right now that think that. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, there's somebody that thinks everything about you.
Yeah.
So you can't possibly, I mean, I always think like this giant goatee, and then I'm like, there are people who probably think it's ridiculous, but I don't care. I also get fan mail about it. So, like, who knows?
I have no doubt. As I said before the call, I'm nothing but impressed by all the facial hair going on over there.
But to my point is, there are people that probably think it's ridiculous, but like, you can't control what somebody's going to think. And I really work hard on trying to move past that too. So,
Yeah, being comfortable in your own skin, I think, is the key to all of this conversation, which is hard to do. And it's hard for a lot of people, especially as we talked about with social media being so prevalent. And you have these horrible keyboard warriors, who are just built to insult. It's really hard to stay focused and stay positive. But going back to the topic at hand, what if it all works out? And what if it all works out even better than we initially imagined? Which seems to be happening for a lot of people. So again, why not us?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree completely. And I think, honestly, as you were talking, I was thinking about this. Like, I think if we can just make decisions with our North Star being, this decision is going to take me closer to my truest self, I think we're going to be in good shape, and I didn't really realize that I was doing that when I was making some big life changes, but thinking back, that's exactly what I was doing. And I think now, having lived through a lot of that and done a lot of quote unquote scary things along the way, I feel like I'm closer to my truest self than I ever have been. And I try to be honest with myself about the things that light me up and get me excited and make me want to do more of it, and things that I said yes to that make me feel not that way. And I think as you get older, you have the luxury of making some of the decisions on that, which again, I'll tie back to young people of like, I think you should say yes to most things when you're young and trying to figure out what's next, because you might like something you didn't think you would. You'll find an opportunity that wouldn't have been there if you didn't say yes. You might do some stuff you hate, and that's fine, but that's the time of life for it. And so I think it's really confusing messaging when you hear people who have already made it in life saying, oh, say no to stuff. Oh, like make sure that you have work-life balance, all these things, which, yeah, ideally, eventually, yes. But if you're 22, like you need to go do a lot of stuff. You need to meet as many people as you can. You need to work as hard as you can. You need to like not sleep sometimes. You need to do all this stuff so that you can live through that, have those experiences, and then start to really know who you are and make decisions based on who that person is. But you've got to get there first, And so I think that the answers are different depending on what stage of life you're in.
Yeah, no doubt about it, for sure.
Totally agree with that. Yeah.
Well, I love that you are doing sort of what I'm doing too, which is what's going on in my head right now. What lesson did I just learn? Oh, I better write that down. Let me share that.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be helpful to somebody. I love that you're doing that. Is there like where are you? What's your next thing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm always trying to have irons in a few fires, but obviously
you don't have to admit anything if you don't want to.
No, it's all good. Like the marching stuff in the marching arts is going great. Actually, this is not really super related to all of this, but my wife and I and our good friend and business partner, Lorenzo Gomez, launched something called Voice of San Antonio. And it's contributor-based content, like sort of elevating the visionary voices of the city. We launched it a few months ago, and it's really taken off, and I'm really proud of it. And so, and I know not everyone on here lives in San Antonio, but even if you're visiting or you just want to see something that I'm doing, like it's worth checking out. And it's like on Instagram, it's at Voice of San Antonio or just voiceofsanantonio.com. But that's been a really, really fun and exciting project that I've been spending a lot of time on. But right in this current moment, marching band and drum corps is taking up a significant portion of my time, to the point where I'm like, I guiltily, admittedly, have not gotten something. I made a goal at the beginning of the year to put out one Substack a week, and I hit that every week for the first, I want to say 5 months. And then we've hit a stretch here where not as much. And so, I'm trying to show myself grace there, but I need to get that ramped back up again, because it's like therapeutic for me to get those thoughts out, and like I said, if it gives people a little bit more awareness about stuff, that's great too. So, yeah, that's a lot of what's going on, with a couple other things in the background that one of these days I'll talk about.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, we're going to be paying attention. I'm glad that you were trying to have grace with yourself, because you were in the middle of drum corps season at the highest level, in addition to marching band stuff. So I think we all are not going to have a problem if those publications.
Well, I appreciate it. When I tell myself I'm going to do something, I really try to do it. So I'm grappling with this one, but I appreciate that.
Well, I mean, clearly that's true, and we've just from everything that we all know about you, we know that that's true. But can only be Superman so many hours of the day. So
even Superman has to sleep.
That's right. That's right.
Does he?
I don't know.
Well, I don't know. It
Sure
seems like
does.
me. Yeah. Yeah, we'll go.
He
with that.
arrived
We'll
in
check
bed,
the
so that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, this has been really fun. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us. I don't want to take too much of your time, because I know you are so super busy, but this has been, thank you for sort of letting me have a little therapy time here talking about this topic. Again, the idea of trusting and taking chances, and especially reminding myself about giving the what might go right as much space in my brain as the what might not go right. I feel like that has been very, very helpful to me, and I've enjoyed talking about that again tonight. Is there anything you want to say as we're wrapping up?
No, it was just a pleasure to meet you, Dan, and thank you for letting me kind of
thanks for sitting
jump in and be a part of this. This was fun.
And
yeah, it's been great. Thank you for the
Dan,
opportunity.
anything you want to say as we're wrapping up?
No, I mean, I appreciate what you do, Tim, and I think it's, the marching arts are better for it, and branching out into all of your other ventures is super cool and exciting. And I think you live by some of the stuff that I'm trying to talk about here, and so I think we're kind of kindred in that way. So just keep on keeping on.
Well, thank you. You too. It's going to be fun to continue to follow everything you're doing. Keep doing great work, and thanks everybody for watching. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.